Well, that's a long time, but are people patient enough for that? For more on this, I'm joined here in the Beijing studio, Professor Fu Jun, Deputy Dean of the School of Government at Peking University, joining us here in Beijing. And also, we are having in our studio Professor Zou Ji, who is the Deputy Director General of the National Climate Change Strategy Research and International Cooperation Center at the National Development and Reform Commission. And it's a great pleasure to have both of you professors. There has only been a very small interval before another round of smog hits Beijing again. While we are doing this conversation, smog is getting ever thicker outside this building. Professor Zou, you're an environmentalist, and you have been to many rounds of climate change negotiations around the world. What exactly is going on with our air here in China?
Many things to say, but certainly, essentially, the pollution source, we have very high intensity for the emission. But certainly, this is also related to meteorological condition. With very specific meteorological condition and the very high intensity of the pollution or emission, especially fine particulates here. To lead to haze or smog.
Well, we all understand that. It's been restated many times, but the question is, when it comes to what is the major source contributing to the
essentially
PM2.5?
3 or 4. One is the coal burning. Coal burning, especially
coal burning, emission from the cars, we all understand that.
That's right.
So which one is the major one? Is it been switching, has been changing the situation from place to place when it comes to these two sectors? Or actually coal burning, particularly during the winter time, is the major source? Would we scientifically, Professor Zou, you are the expert here, be able to judge at least for uncertain occasions, what the major source is, so that we can have solutions?
According to the research, I would say coal burning is number one, and followed by vehicle emission, as well as the VOC from construction sites or building, etc. But I would emphasize the high intensity. I should say high density of the population. So look at the population in Beijing or in the cluster of cities. So as you may know, we have Heihe-Tengchun line, or we also call it Huhuanyong line. That means that over 96% of the population staying in only 36% of the territories. So that means that so many people in so limited areas and with very high intensity of energy use, emission, activity, etc. So this is the fundamental reason. But certainly in the past years, we have seen very rapid increase of energy use, especially coal burning.
Right. So Professor Fu, I have to tap on your door because you are a governance scholar. What kind of governance capability do you think the central government and the local governments has to demonstrate in order to meet the demands that they are going to be held accountable for the pollution problems, and they're going to be held accountable for providing solutions to the pollution problem, especially the smog?
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint each bureaucrat to be responsible for that. It's a very complicated system in China. What is unique about Chinese political economy is if you look at the big Chinese cities, their level of concentration of power is so extreme. In the case of Beijing, you have the concentration of political power, you have the concentration of economic power, commercial power, the power of education. And if you compare that to other cities in the world, different dimensions of power tend to be scattered around. In the case of the United States, New York, commercial power. Washington, D.C., political power.
But I do have a counter argument for you right now, Professor Fu, if you say that is the reason, because we have seen over the past few days. Enormous amount of smog, not only in the city of Beijing or in Guangzhou or in Shanghai. We got 20 cities in China with severe pollution problems, almost reaching the orange or red alert. And then you got also 30 cities in China that have heavy pollution, which is also very worrisome. So what we are talking about is health-threatening elements, which we are all breathing every day. So the question is, what about the efficiency of providing solutions to these problems as people are getting much less patients than they used to be?
Well,
Professor
on one
Fu.
hand, there are concentration of human beings, this
Yeah,
gigantic
Professor Fu
cities.
already
On
mentioned.
the other, if you combine that with the unique aspects of Chinese energy structure, as Professor Zou mentioned, our energy structure so far is predominantly by the burning of coal, and the coal tend to be dirty. Unless we dramatically change the energy structure, the problem will stay with us.
Right. Can we, Professor Zou,
I
dramatically
think so.
change it? And how long would it take? During that period of time, do we have a calculation, for example, about how much effect it would have on people's health? And as a result of that, how much even material wealth has to be sacrificed because people are suffering from their health problems? Do we have a calculation of what pollution is really bringing to us?
Actually, we do have some plan for that. Number one is the fuel switching. As you know, we have set up the non-fossil fuel target for 2020 and beyond 2030.
We do.
So this is number one, and number two is the efficiency improvement for energy use. The higher the efficiency, the less the fuel you will use. And the number three, restructuring the economy. So that means that in the coming years, we should change our development model,
right.
and to produce the value, not only for investment for heavy industry, but also from service. This is the fundamental way. And the other way is the spatial planning. We should avoid increasingly intensity or density of the population, especially to avoid to have more mega cities. So certainly urbanization will be something must, but we need to find a different way. That means environmentally smart urbanization. That means small town or decentralized system, etc., etc.
Let's talk about some of these points a little bit later, but let me just ask you this question. Even with professors, the plans that both of you have mentioned, whether it's about energy efficiency, the switch of economic restructuring reform, and all of this, how long will it take? And what about the years from now until that goal will be reached? Even those goals are being reached, it's only accounting for a minority % of the energy use, let's just say, when it comes to alternative energy. So what about the situation? How long people are asking, do we need to phase up to these kind of heavy smog, and the intensity of which has been ever increasing, and the intervals has been reducing?
So I'm not fortune teller, but I can also do. I can only do scenario studies.
Help us to understand that.
So for scenario studies, we can say for 5 years we can make some change, but I cannot expect we change for all. So within 10 years, if we do our best.
2025, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we can make significant change. So this is what I can say only.
But the thing is, the patience is running out. People are asking about solutions, and people want to see those solutions being implemented as soon as possible. And yet people are feeling strange because the debate is still going on as to what the major source of pollution is among various departments and interest groups. So Professor Fu, facing a complicated governance issue like this, what can be done?
Well, you are looking at two sources of pollution. One is structural. Structure means you are talking about energy structure. That will take some time to change the structure. You cannot expect to have that changed overnight.
Right.
The other is the government is indeed looking at the marginal differences. For instance, for the past few days, they imposed the red alert. And by that, they cut the number of vehicles on the road by half. And well, for me to expect, probably that
And
can make
children are not going to schools to
yes,
avoid
it's a
some health
marginal
hazards.
difference. As today shows, it's coming back. So it's a marginal difference. Now, if the bulk of the source of pollution is from coal burning, by cutting even half of the vehicles, that is only going to make a marginal difference. So you're looking at the structure, you are also looking at margins. Longer term, the government has agreed to have a plan, for instance, to cap emission rates by 2030, right?
Right.
Cap that.
Reaching
Yeah,
the target,
peaking year.
reaching the
And
peak. by
China is
2030.
going to launch a carbon trade system up and down China by the year 2017.
Right.
And once you do that, you have to impose a very rigorous regulatory framework across China. And better still, you probably need to factor into the assessment measures of local officials,
But you know
not just
what?
GDP.
But you know what, Professor Zou, you're an environmentalist, so I'm sure you travel to various places to look at some of the pollution problems. Professor Zou, you know, there are national rules, local rules and regulations as well for some of the heavily polluting industries to observe. And yet the problem is, even though they have already set up so-called purifying equipment of the air, they sometimes just let them stay there because they don't want to waste, quote unquote, waste the electricity to save the budget, or they only make it operational when the inspection teams are there. So these are all loopholes of the implementation of all this wonderful plan central government, as well as the rule of law has been provided. So what can be done? Whose responsibilities are there? And also, who is going to be punished as a result of malfunction or non-applications to these rules and also regulations, Professor Zou?
Actually, this is a matter of enforcement.
It is the enforcement.
Yeah, and I think online monitoring system should play a role
What
first.
kind of monitoring system do we have now?
Now we do have some monitoring system for some key sources or key enterprises.
Right.
We have online monitoring system, but sometimes it's not the matter of technology, but the matter of governance. So if we do find some polluters, they pollute, they emit, what kind of penalty we can we can impose on them? So sometimes for enterprises and also for part of the local government, they go along with each other. I mean, just for protect the local
Employment,
GDP,
for example, GDP,
yeah,
tax rates, and
that's
stuff
right,
like that.
That's
yeah.
right. And then they do not. I mean, local government should take the responsibility to enforce the environmental law, including monitoring. But meanwhile, at national level, for the environmental authorities, they also have national level monitoring system to monitor the some top polluters. But I think it seems if we do make the cost of pollution high enough, and then the pollution should be less and less. But that's a matter of economic system.
Well, here's the thing. With this once in 37 years urban working conference that being held by the Chinese central authorities, what can we see as the solution? Professor Fu, this specific document coming out of that conference talking about building cities in harmony with nature, talking about the harmony with nature should be prioritized. The environmental protection should be prioritized. But the thing is, it's about implementation, isn't it? So do we see some new points about how to enforce the implementation of the existing rules and laws? And also, what about some of the questions raised earlier by Professor Zou? That is, when we are doing urbanization, how to avoid some of the already existing problems contributing to the environmental issues in megacities and cluster of cities, as we have heard in our backgrounder, Professor Fu, there are likely to be more clusters of cities and many more megacities in China to be built. So what are the solutions?
Well, it's not just a matter of implementation. It's also a matter of the concept of urbanization. So far, China has been in the process of urbanization for the past 3 or so decades. But so far, what China has been doing well is the physical dimension of urbanization, buildings, infrastructure.
Right.
But what we have not been doing well is the human dimension of urbanization, or we haven't been done a good enough job to build the social infrastructure of urbanization. And that tend to be a unique aspects of Chinese urbanization. So if we look at the Chinese official figures of urbanization, 55%. Advanced economy is 80%, so you see the gap here. But if you look the rate of 55% deep enough, if you consider peasants moving from countryside to cities and they have entitlements to urban service, the real rate is 35%. So it's much lower.
Right.
So without closing the gap, if you want to push on the second round of urbanization, it will be very difficult. So you have to patch up that rate first, so that when you build, you have people to live in those cities, so urbanization will continue. In a way, we are just halfway in industrialization and urbanization.
Professor Zou, before we go, we talk about low carbon will be the priority for Chinese cities in the future, according to this urbanization work conference. We also talk about the urgency that people see in terms of dealing with environmental pollutions. But the question is, from now until the plan is beautifully designed, what are some of the most important things need to be done?
For example, the right warning, this is one very immediate measure we can take. That's in the view to reduce the risk, to reduce the exposure of the population to the pollution. So this is a sort of adaptation measures, but certainly this is not the final ultimate measures. But this is something you can do today. And the other thing is changing behavior. That's especially for travel. So if the citizen, when we complain the pollution, let's change our way to for travel, local travel. So take public transport as more as possible. But certainly the government should take some measure to encourage that and to provide for public transport infrastructure. I think this is another way in short term.
Okay, of course, the private citizens will do their best in order to reduce pollution as much as possible. People will have to change their mindset, but also they are going to monitor very closely as to how governments, whether central and local governments, are doing their job in monitoring some of the implementations of the existing rules and regulations and how their approaches to the environmental pollution would be like in the future. For now, I want to thank the two of you professors for being with us, Professor Fu Jun and Professor Zou Ji. Thank you very much, professors.